Well, I teach, my title is Assistant Professor of Science Journalism at the University of Missouri, and I have a joint appointment in the J School and in the Science and Ag Journalism program, which is in Kaffner, the College of Ag, Food, and Natural Resources. I'm 50-50, and I spent 28 years or so, still am actually, writing about science, the environment, conservation, health medicine, and the reason I got involved in drones, I guess I can jump ahead to that, is 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago now, a fellow named Scott Pham, who was a content director at KBIA, called me up and said, nope, I'm looking for this light, for that.
Lights?
Yeah, for this light here, right here. Thank you. Scott, who I didn't know, called and said, would you be interested in doing journalism with drones? And after he described to me what they were, not the military ones, but this, although drones like this are used in the military for small combat team operations. Of course I said yes at no time flat. The reason he came to me was because I do journalism that's out in rural areas. I do environmental, I do agricultural, I do natural resource journalism, and some others that are outside, out in the field. That's my specialty. And what I like to teach here are courses that get students out into the field covering these subjects, like journalists do. So Scott came to me because that's where you could fly drones at the time, or so we thought. He had an interpretation of FAA regulations that I bought into at the time, and it turned out differently. We'll get into that in a little bit. And do remind me, because there's a little bit of politics involved here, and I'll talk about that a little bit, but to understand the politics, I want you to understand drones, some of their history, some of the culture that we have surrounding them, and how MU got involved in it, which was Scott getting a grant from the university with a friend of his in information technology who liked drones, liked to build drones, and they brought me along because they needed somebody to teach a class. And I'm always looking for new ways to get students into it, especially in the field. So that's what happened here. I've explained to those of you who were here a little earlier about how it works. That was a single lens GoPro. Here is a GoPro Dual where you can do 3D video and images. We're experimenting with that now in collaboration with some others, including Clyde Bentley at the journalism school in the MU 3D project. And if you ever shoot 3D, it turns out you've got to be kind of close to your subject for it to make any difference. Flying high above buildings, not so much. So much to talk about. Okay. Yeah, I'm on this one. End of the day, tired, going to be a little spacey. But let's keep going. For my friend Rick Shaw, who helped me teach a drone course during the spring semester, I wanted to make an announcement about a week from Saturday. POI is having a photojournalism workshop. One of them is on drones, and that's going to occur upstairs in Smith Forum at 10 a.m. You are welcome to come. I think he's invited me to say something there, but he's becoming an expert in his own right, and Rick is very interested in drones and how to point them. It turns out that pointing the camera where you want it is very important. If it were only that easy. Okay. I am going to play a little video that actually Rick did after last spring's class. It's going to compile what I could say in the next 15 minutes into about 4 minutes, maybe 3. So bear with me, please. Good. Let's just do this. So the question is, what is this? This is a drone. kind of sounds like a giant bumblebee. It's sophisticated, it's small, it is lightweight, relatively safe, and relatively inexpensive right now. I'm Bill Allen. I'm an assistant professor of science journalism. What we're doing is trying to help our students get a jump start on new technology. We're learning about how to fly drones, to help them begin to think, to unleash some creative juices in their brains, to think about how this new technology could be used in their field, whether they're studying science and other applications, including in agriculture. Where I really come from as a journalist is to think about how to use these to get stories, to better inform the public, to gather news, to tell the public about what's going on in our world. This is a quadcopter, 4 propellers, 4 engines, 4 arms, and it is your basic entry-level, decent hobby drone. It's the one we decided to use for training in this course, partly because it's relatively sturdy, relatively cheap, and very navigable, very flyable, good to learn on. But we're inside a livestock arena at the university, which has a great surface of dirt and many of the things that come in dirt. Scattered cow dung here and there, it's you know, it feels good after a while. So why are we inside on a day like this? Because it's the only legal way we can fly right now. By the definition of the FAA, we have to follow regulations and actually a strict, specific order about the university not flying outdoors. We have to train indoors.
Now this drone that crashed Monday crashed on the 30th story of the Metropolitan
St. Louis police are investigating whose drone crashed into the Metropolitan
skies over downtown St. Louis.
The FAA now investigating after someone crashed a drone into the city's tallest office
Right now, we
building.
can tell you the FAA is investigating the drone crash into the building.
Drones mean different things to different people. And in the case of hobbyists who fly before they're ready and get in trouble and have accidents, that looks bad and that is stupid and terrible and should not happen. What we're talking about here is a different kind of drone. It is civilian, it is not weaponized, it is used for good purposes by responsible people. We need to have the ability to fly these things and teach our students how to do this the right way. We will do that. They will be responsible. And those are the kinds of journalists and storytellers that you want to have flying these things. They're law-abiding, we follow regulations, we don't break the rules. That's part of our ethic here at NMU. And so we still want to push into new frontiers, and the way to do that is for now, until the FAA and a whole set of other stakeholders gets done wrestling over the right to fly safely outside, we can only do what we can do, and that's fly inside. But I do think the FAA has the responsibility and the difficult task of sorting out a very complex situation where our society can use these tools for the greater good. Okay. Now, I was going to go through some concepts, definitions, examples of video that have been done. If you've already seen all that, I can just switch over to questions and we can do it with you as the presenters, so to speak, asking me questions. Happy to do it either way. Strong feelings either way, folks? Keep going? All right. I might move through quickly some things that I think you might know already. All right, two kinds of drones. There you go. That's the kind we have. Rotor. How many rotors? Well, you call this one a quadcopter for obvious reasons. You're all at a university. You know what quad means. There are tricopters. And there are octocopters and hexes. And then you have fixed wing. Those are the two basic kinds. They're controlled by radio signal in a device like that. They are surrounded by acronyms, and people can't agree on what to call these. And I don't want you to necessarily memorize anything here, but just so you know how difficult it is. We call them drones. That's probably the way it's going to stick. UAS is the preferred acronym by government, military, and the industry. UAV is what hobbyists call them. And if you ever get into this, you can worry about the difference between aerial vehicle and aircraft system. SUAS is what this is. It's under 55 pounds. That's an FAA category. FPV, you might hear that word. That is a drone that's slightly more advanced in its technology. And through the camera, it will send a picture down to an attachment on the RC, on the controller, where you can have your iPhone or iPad or something that you can basically fly as if you're looking out the pilot window, which is the front of the drone. Okay. FAA, everyone likes to hate the feds. Don't do that. You know, we're the feds. Fact is, their main job is to keep big birds from falling out of the sky and killing 200 people. And if I were the FAA administrator, I don't know if I would be allowing anybody to fly these things right now. Because guess what? Idiots, like we were talking about earlier, have flown aircraft like this up into the flight path of big birds like this on approach to LaGuardia, San Diego, Atlanta. Pilots have been reporting them. Who does this? If you know anything about bird aircraft collisions and what happens, sorry bird and sorry aircraft. Into the engine it goes, engine catches fire, airplane goes down, kills a bunch of people. Many, many, many of those just from birds. Now, a drone will do the same thing. Why do people do that? Why do they fly like that? Idiots. FAA, their job is to keep these things in the air. I kind of like that. I bet you do too. Some facts. This gets to a little bit of the law. You need to understand that if you're not a hobbyist doing it for fun, you cannot fly a drone. If you're going to make money at it as a photographer or a videographer for a PR agency or a newsroom of any kind, or it turns out a university teacher teaching a class on drones and teaching students how to use them to do journalism, that is illegal unless you have something called a COA, which is a license you get from the FAA that takes months. And that's just the paperwork. It takes more months to get the COA. And it's pretty useless for journalism because in a COA you ask for a specific place that you're going to fly under specific conditions with a specific aircraft and a specific pilot. And we all know news isn't like that. It happens and you got to be able to go. These are important to know because these are central to the way it works now and may work in the future. The hobbyist guidelines, if you're doing this for fun, as long as you're below 400 feet in altitude and you're flying in unpopulated areas, which means away from people and away from buildings, you can fly. That's why they came to me. Bill's in rural areas. Bill takes students out into rural areas so we could test drone journalism. You need to be able to maintain visual contact at all times with the drone. That means two things. One, it means let it get so far away that you can't see it. So that means, for most of us, within a kilometer, maybe even a couple hundred yards at the most. You can do this. If you were to buy one from Amazon right now, pay the big charge, get it delivered tomorrow afternoon, you could be flying your drone out somewhere in a rural area tomorrow afternoon. All right. Congress told FAA they had to have new regulations that would open up the use of drones for commercial purposes and other ways by September 2015. Nobody believes that's going to happen. talk more about that later. Like many new tools that civilians get their hands on in the history of technology, they start out of military applications. We can go through a list, but since this isn't a course on the history of technology, I want to talk about radar and sonar and all the other technologies that came out of the military. And right now, most Americans think of that when we say drone. And they think not only of that, but the whole concept of a killing machine, a surveillance machine, and possibly in the context of shooting one of those missiles at a house that has a bad guy in it, because we're at war. But unfortunately, there is collateral damage. And a lot of people don't like that. And so, bad image. And that image shadows the use of these. But they're going into civilian use. I'll skip over some of these facts. The reason everyone likes them, they're inexpensive compared with renting a helicopter to get news footage or any other kind of aerial information, and they're just easy to fly. Plus, you know what? I'm telling you, they are fun to fly. They're just fun. And anybody can do it, even if you haven't played video games all your life. Lots of concerns about privacy, happens to be part of the Constitution. We could go on and on and on about these concerns. It's already been popularized in episodes of South Park, Glee. I'm missing at least one. Idiots like this fella who took a drone up and crashed it outside the football stadium at the University of Alabama last fall. Hurt somebody. And the cops had this image of him because his camera was, of course, when you take off, quite often the person taking off is in the view of the video. And so there he was, and they later were able to identify him and arrest him. There is in Australia, some guy who didn't know how to fly was flying for a video company that was filming a triathlon, and he lost control of his, I can't tell if it's a hex or octocopter. Notice who he's helping here. He's more interested in rescuing his own drone than the bleeding athlete. It's hard for me to not use foul language at moments like this. And of course, our favorite idiot, the guy who flew this very model of drone onto the White House lawn, about 3 o'clock in the morning. A few too many alcoholic beverages. Had all kinds of, let's just say, poor judgment and made all kinds of, let's say, bad decisions. He got off, by the way. The cultural effect of drones in helping to foment increasingly the current climate of fear that we're all living in. Let me show you a commercial you may have seen. It's very dark. This is about a month ago I first saw it.
I think we can make it. Right? It's okay, Jim. Just stay calm and move as quietly as possible. Everyone understand? No sudden movements. Google search Bodega Beach House.
There's always one cool guy who buys the right car and doesn't get attacked. But how many of you have seen Hitchcock's film, The Birds? If you have, you will link up completely with many of the images in that film. They're almost direct out of it. And so it's a hilarious commercial. I wish I'd done it. But you see, okay. Well, we're at the University of Missouri, and we, right? If you haven't seen this, I want to show this to you. It's a clip from about 2 years ago. Well, it is about 2 years ago. I'll just play it for you, and you can have it. It's part of understanding the background that you're trying to understand the law in.
We're back with a new kind of higher learning at some colleges that teaches students how to operate drone aircraft. Drones, of course, have been highly effective and controversial in Afghanistan. There's controversy as well over their emerging civilian uses, including journalism. NBC's Tom Trong has more tonight.
At this pristine nature reserve tucked away in central Missouri, a flutter of activity. Snow geese on their winter migration.
I can't explain how beautiful that is when you see it with your own eyes. The next best thing is to see it with video and view it that way.
Those aren't snow
Bill
geese.
Allen is a journalism professor at the University of Missouri. His students are using a new tool to tell this story. A drone outfitted with a camera flying above the plains. Missouri's journalism school is the oldest in the country and now among the first experimenting with this new and controversial technology. Why? The drone's ability to access remote, dangerous areas.
You're listening to KBIA.
Fueled by a $25,000 grant secured by a local radio station, young reporters are learning new ways to cover stories.
Breaking news, natural disasters, floods are a big one because it's really difficult to get around on foot in floods.
It's new technology for an old profession.
We're using the drone to just sort of tell good stories in a unique way and sort of get a new angle on things. And I think, yes, literally a new angle.
At the University of Nebraska, students are using drones to film the effects of drought.
The Platte River has become a long sandbar.
And it's not just students. Real estate agents outside Los Angeles are using drones to showcase properties. And the opening scene of the latest James Bond film, shot in Turkey, featured footage captured by drones. While the interest in drones is taking off, there is a considerable amount of pushback. Not everyone is ready for an eye in the sky. Privacy advocates are worried. At least 33 states have considered laws that would restrict drone use. Federal regulations allow hobbyists to fly drones below 400 feet over unpopulated areas. But Congress has ordered the FAA to open the airspace for commercial drones by 2015.
We're at the start of an experience similar to the introduction of the printing press, the steam engine, or the computer.
While the story of drones in the U.S. is still unfolding, these students may be writing the next chapter. Tom Trong, NBC News, Columbia, Missouri.
Well, anyway, that was the scene a little over 2 years ago. University of Nebraska was the first university to start using drones in journalism. We followed with this course, and we did stories on those topics, 5 of which appeared on KBIA on the webpage as some online news content. They were fun to do, and we learned a lot by doing them. I'm hitting you with a lot of video, but you need to see some stuff. This is one of the stories we did, the video of one of the stories. You know, we did main story written, sidebar written, we had pictures. I'll just play this and you can show, I'll show you about this time 2 years ago we covered a controlled burn of a prairie, and this, I like to show this because this will help you get a landscape perspective and begin to think how you might use it in whatever you want to do. Whoops. Because we're no more than a couple hundred feet up at any given time in this video. You'll notice there's ground video.
You know, prairie is only maintained if you get periodic fires. If you don't
drone video,
then it'll turn into forest.
This is the place.
A lot of this is native. I mean, this has never been plowed, which is critical. The minute you plow it, you lose hundreds of species. If you let woody species come in, it's no longer prairie. This is a native grassland, produces a lot of seed. Some of these big blue stem grasses are probably 1,000 years old. When they put the interstate in, we lost a few acres to the interstate. Got to keep it under control.
This is I-70,
even though
20 miles east of Columbia.
That fire is. Because once you start it, it's really hard to put it out. If you put in good fire lanes, you have the right crew. Hope the wind holds. We've had runaway fires a couple of times. The wind shifted on us. You want to get rid of woody growth because woody growth will take over. But if you burn it too often, then you favor the warm season grasses. In a wet year, the grasses will be up to here and the seed heads will be up over my head. I have about 300 species of plants here. There isn't a whole lot of replacement by seed because these plants can live forever and ever. They're adapted to fire.
So much to talk about, and I might just for comparison purposes, show you a clip about a fire another group of students and I covered last week. We were down in Costa Rica. I try to get out and take them places it's legal to fly, and it's not legal to fly in the United States. So we got to Costa Rica. I happened to work with people down there, and we trained some National Park firefighters how to fly drones so they could get up and use it for tactical advantage in fighting fires. But I want you to see the next clip just because it will give you a sense of how rapidly the technology, at least for video, is advancing. First, I should mention that FAA sent us a letter in the summer of 2013 and said, you guys are flying illegally and cease and desist, or we'll fine you and your university $10,000 and put you in jail. I assumed that meant me, not Lofton. Of course, Lofton wasn't here at the time. But ever since following the letter of the law, so much to talk about. Let me just show this one other. That's really it, isn't it? Yeah. There's the Casona, and then there's, that's not what I know. This was a week ago, Tuesday. I hope. There's no sound on this one, it's just raw video. And what's happened is the Costa Ricans have set a controlled burn to burn off some prairie grass. It's the height of the dry season and a very dangerous time in fire down there. This is a historic plot that gets burned every year. The Google executives, Prince Philip of England, this is the Duke of Edinburgh, the Queen's husband, got to set that fire. 2 MU students got to set that fire that you just saw there. Now, a drone pilot, our guy, is taking this up to get an aerial video. This is the field that's being burned right now, and you can see they started a fire here. In a minute, they'll start lighting it down this way. These guys are moving down here with their drip torch, setting it on fire so it'll cut that way. And in the end, this whole field will burn. And as I'm gabbing, and we can start Q&A if you want, you'll see this thing really take off. It's very potent fuel. And in the light here, you may not be able to see a whole lot better than the previous video, but you can probably already see how much more controlled this is. The gimbal has all kinds of technology that makes it very steady. The camera's much better than that GoPro. Anyway, you can see them now moving along this side. What you do when you have a controlled burn, in the tropics anyway, is you set this going into the wind, and then you set this so that they burn together and kind of burn each other out. And you don't want to be in there when it happens. Normally at this point, I would say let's all take 3x5 note card and write down 3 ideas you have right now for how you would use this. If you could pilot with that aircraft, which is a Phantom II Vision Plus, costs approximately $1,200 to $1,300 if you include the batteries and the chargers and whatnot. Whether you're in Stratcom, whether you're in broadcast news, any kind of online news production or communications, how would you use this? These guys are going to use it just to get up and see fires when they arrive at a wildfire, to see where it is. They are low-tech operations. They can barely afford a couple of radios. So the fire boss can send 3 guys out alone. Much larger burn area. This is a very controlled burn. In territory that's not flat like this is. They lose people, people get hurt, people can get surrounded, but if you have a drone looking over the operation, for them this could mean life and death. So we feel good about training them and having this kind of application in conservation. Anyway, I could watch this all day. We want to talk about what you want to talk about now. So I'm at your disposal if you have questions. Yes?
I have a question. I'm a broadcast journalist, so I'm just thinking in terms of breaking news, to that effect, you're trying to get information out as quickly as possible. How easy or difficult is it to take this video and put it to something like broadcast? Or
Yeah.
put it to something like what?
I'd say like any video that you capture with, say, your smartphone or digital equipment that you have now in your trunk or your back seat, this is the same thing. This can stream through the wireless or radio connection. This is FPV. Oh gosh, does this one have a wireless crowd or is it video? A radio connection. If you think of a drone as having its own wireless cloud around it, and you're within that cloud when you're flying, you have a wireless connection. You can actually be recording on the ground of what it's seeing in the air, and you could be streaming it even somewhere else. Out in the middle of Costa Rican tropical forest, I don't know, but as fast as you could with anything else. You would just carry this in your trunk with you. Every vehicle at the station would have a reporter and a camera person and whoever else might, depending on the size of the station, right? Beyond the crew, you'd have your antennas, the whole 9 yards, your editing equipment on board. You'd have one of these there too. So would a print reporter, just in your trunk. If you happen to be covering, I wish in the '93 flood, I was working in St. Louis for the Post-Dispatch. I got sent out to a lot of places when a levee broke. If I'd had one of these in my trunk, just get up, you could watch it, you could send film off that could be posted online. We're just getting into the online. After a tornado, I mean, you name it, when you're out in the field. Now, the journalists will soon be able to fly these legally if they meet certain requirements, including a certified aircraft. It's going to be off the shelf, just like this. They're not going to be designed specially. You'll have to have the equivalent of a driver's license, but for piloting instead of driving. You don't necessarily have to pass, probably, any kind of a behind-the-wheel test. Although you will have to have insurance, some other things. Will you be able to fly in an urban area, or maybe cover a house fire? I'm not going to say they're going to allow that anytime soon, unless you have extra training. Maybe even possibly the kind of training a helicopter pilot has. House fires, crowds, the quad, illegal. I'm not seeing that changing anytime soon unless you're really somehow certified at a higher level. You know, there's a lot of illegal stuff going on. I don't know if you have seen this wonderful promotional video called The District about Columbia. It has some drone footage in it. And it's really cool video and it's really cool footage, but they flew over the city. That's not legal. Anyway, we all want to do it. It's just a question of being careful and ethical and that kind of thing.
Actually reminds me, I think I saw like CNN had drone coverage of the Selma Marsh Bridge. How were they able to do that?
Yeah, no. CNN has special permission, a special agreement with the FAA to experiment as a news organization in the use of drones. And I actually didn't see their drone coverage. I saw Jon Stewart's take on it on The Daily Show, where he lambasted them for talking more about how they were using a drone than actually talking about the meaning of the march. That might have been a little unfair on his part, but then they showed this drone footage of an empty bridge, the name of which I can't remember and should. They were doing an upward shot of the bridge, as if they were lifting the drone up and shooting the bridge, but nobody was on it. It was obviously taken earlier in the day when the Secret Service let them fly. I don't think they were going to let them fly. I could be wrong, because Stewart might have just kept running that shot over and over. Do you any of you remember seeing that coverage, the CNN coverage? Did they show any people?
Very few people.
Yeah. But anyway, that's okay. I mean, they're letting CNN, FAA is letting CNN work this out. And which leads to another thing. I mean, there's just obviously a lot of hype here. This guy who said it's going to be the next most important thing since the steam engine. I don't know, what else did he say? Did he say the computer? I mean, get real. This is the hype that surrounds a new technology that a lot of people are trying to sell. I'm skeptical myself. I don't know. I think it'll be cool for a while, you know, like the next new thing. And it'll settle down, and maybe we'll use it as journalists and other communicators for a special perspective. Like, as an investigative reporter, I can imagine using this tool to find stories and even document. In a rural landscape, say hog waste flowing out of a concentrated animal feeding operation, a CAFO, into a local waterway, which is public. And that's against the law, last time I checked. The Big Ag is, I'm saying this to you, Mr. Camera, Big Ag is doing its best through its legislative puppets to change that so that it will be illegal. It'll be okay to put pollution in our public drinking water, and anyone who films it will be prosecuted. I mean, that's the way the laws are being pushed right now. It may sound pretty extreme, but you know, big money is steering what you can use drones for, or what journalists can do in rural areas in a rather dramatic way. Do you guys follow that? I made an extreme statement, maybe not very detailed, but essentially the, you know, ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange, whatever they are. C stands for, I don't want to say corporation, but it may as well, metaphorically speaking. They are a legislation mill, and the same kind of legislation is soaring up, written the same way in so many different legislatures. A, to keep the public away from any kind of big ag activities. You know, yes, they're afraid of the Humane Society of the United States, but they also are keeping journalists and the public away from how our food is produced. Now I realize I'm getting off onto one of my pet problem areas that I am very concerned about as a journalist. And if I had a soapbox, I would be standing on it right now and getting off. Back to you. Yeah.
What makes drones different than like normal aircraft and helicopter hobbyist-like things?
Yeah, they're kind of, the main difference is they're every man and every woman's aircraft. I mean, you and I could learn to fly one, you could learn to fly one of these things. And tomorrow you could be flying and getting pictures of anything from 400 feet. You and I could not learn to fly a helicopter that fast, and we couldn't buy or rent one. So for $500 basically, plus a camera, you could do what it costs $1,000 to do for 1 hour in a helicopter or an airplane, roughly. You call the airport, you have to get a pilot, pay that pilot, you have to get the aircraft fueled and over to you, and that costs $1,000 an hour, according to the estimates that I look at. A drone, once you buy it, if your battery is charged and you have 4 AA batteries in here, and your GoPro battery is charged, you can go anywhere, anytime you want, pull out of your trunk and take a look. That's the main difference. They're easier to learn to fly. They are much, much, much cheaper. That's the main reason.
What about like hobbyists with remote control helicopters and remote control aircraft? Is regulations different for them?
The hobbyists have that they're allowed to do it under 400 feet, and there's other couple of conditions. Yes. And the funny thing is, the hobbyists, they're just, a majority of the hobbyists are fun-loving, responsible people, but some of them are what I call fighter pilots. You know, they want to fly aircraft at the edge of the envelope and have fun, take risks, go fast. Whereas as journalists, that's not how we're going to fly these things. You don't point a camera, well, maybe sometimes do. Like a fighter pilot, you point a camera like a cargo pilot. You're easy, slow. In Spanish we call them tranquilo or suave. Smooth, steady shots. I like that because it means your investment is going to last longer, and you're not going to crash on triathletes, probably, or fly up into crazy places where you shouldn't be, like the Met Square building in St. Louis, or the approach path for the transcontinental airliners at Kennedy Airport in New York. Anyway, there's tons of those kinds of cases, by the way, of bad behavior. Not necessarily by hobbyists, who generally know what they're doing, but by amateurs who order from Amazon and the next day think they can fly without any training. It doesn't take long to learn, but if you're going to fly your drone off the 30th floor of your apartment along, what was it? I can't remember what street in New York. It wasn't Wall Street. But of course the guy crashed and almost hit somebody. So I'm going too far on your question. The point is they're cheaper and they're within our reach. I think a lot of us are maybe, we want to be pilots, but we don't trust ourselves to fly ourselves up there. So we can stand on the ground and be pilots. Yeah. Yes?
How far away are the hobbyist versions from being autonomous? I know the military grade ones are.
Yeah, not this one, but a couple levels up, you can put in waypoints, which are GPS coordinates, into a program that, and push a button, and the drone will go up, hover, make sure its GPS is all set, and it will go on its way and fly, around all those waypoints and make pictures or whatever you want. In agriculture, that's being studied to count your cattle on a cattle farm or cattle ranch. little RF frequency ear tag on your cows. We'll identify this specific cow. And, you know, cattle farmers, in Missouri they're called cattle farmers. Out west, they're cattle ranchers. I know this because I asked them. But every day, you want to know where your cattle are. So with a drone, you can do that, and it is a true drone. It's programmed. There's no human intervention. It just goes and does its thing. The research, if it's successful, will be able to download to your computer the location of every animal and whether it's moved. And if it hasn't, it may be sick. You may go check on it. If they've disappeared along a fence line overnight, you may suspect cattle rustling, which actually is a big story here in Missouri. I don't know if you knew that or not, but lots of stolen cattle. So that's kind of an answer to your question. Not this, this would be the beginning of middle level drone, I would say. The beginning, the cheaper version, but more like in the 15 to 2,000 range, you could put those waypoints in.
Are those still considered hobbyists, so they have to be visible?
I'm not sure hobbyists are, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know. What I said about counting cattle, that actually would be illegal. That would be a commercial use. It would be for profit. You would be counting your cattle using a drone. And even though you're out in the middle of nowhere, 1,000 miles from the nearest airport, that would be illegal. Are farmers doing it? Yes, they are. All around the state. Other questions? Yeah, back in the back, please. And then we'll get back to you.
A hobbyist drone pilot that catches, by chance, a newsworthy event. How is that different than a ground-based individual with a cell phone camera catching that same event?
Yeah, I agree. It's no difference. It's the FAA. It's the FAA. You know, we're dealing with when you're up off the ground, and you have to deal with the agency that thinks it controls all the airspace. Right outside that window is the FAA. Right outside that window. Can you believe it?
And when I hand KBIA that footage, am I now in trouble if I receive payment versus giving it to them without charge?
Even if you don't receive payment, you could be in trouble.
Well, they're not commercial, but
yeah. The way FAA reasoned in our case is we thought, okay, we're students, we're educational, we're not making any money here. KBIA, it says public radio. You know, they don't make money. Wrong. Students come here, they pay tuition. This is advertising. I forget what the argument was in KBIA's case, but you got the feeling that FAA was simply doing a rear guard kind of action and maybe stretching logic a bit, because they're in charge of that space. I didn't like it, but I'm one of those guys who's I don't. If the government says don't do it, all right. If nothing's at risk, like if nobody's being hurt, or some law isn't being broken, or there's not some corruption, or some story that has to be told, then I'll relax. Especially if I represent an impoverished university. I say impoverished just because I'm upset, like a lot of people, about the lack of state support for a state university. Anyway, let's go have a couple of beers and I'm with you. It's kind of ridiculous. It's not kind of ridiculous. And it's ironic because, well, it's not fair. But you see what he's saying. Firstly, you could get one of those sticks. I did. I bought one of those like 6-foot extenders to put a GoPro on. And I take a shot like that, it's okay. But if I fly this thing up here, I could be fined $10,000. What's the difference? And you had another question, yes?
Yeah, my question is, there are people out there that are like shooting drones out of the sky when they see them. What about those people that are afraid that people are spying on them or something?
Yeah, there's that fear. I have seen some video, this was 2 years ago, of some hunters shooting down a drone. I didn't actually see them shoot. I saw hunters. I saw the drone climbing and trees blocking, and then I heard a little pop, 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 and then all of a sudden the drone was going down. I think this was North Carolina. And it was the Humane Society of the United States, or People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, and I think both. I do get that question sometimes. Is it legal for me to shoot down one of these things? I don't know, man. I think discharging a firearm in city limits is illegal. Yeah, but can I shoot down a drone? I don't know. I really am not. I'm just teaching people how to fly, right? And talking a little bit about the issues. I'm not an expert, but I've heard of it happening, and whenever I'm talking to, like I presented on drones a couple of years ago at the Missouri State Fair. The Ag College asked me to go set up a booth. And so I had a few students with me, and we had a couple of drones, and people would come in this door, and you'd get the jokes about, oh, I can't wait till those start flying over my farm. I'm going to get some target practice. And by the time they were talking to me all along, and I was telling them about what they could do on their farms using a drone, they would be saying, well, how can I get one of these things? And where do I fly it? And I say, you can't. And they'll ask why. And so, of course, I leave them at the end. Oh, that damn federal government, they just won't. So you're going from one extreme to the other, I guess. But the fact is, it's an emotional subject, loaded with fear, cultural baggage, privacy issues, etc. Did I see another hand up? Yeah.
What is your expectation of the next FAA iteration of rules, and what is your desire for the next iteration of FAA rules?
Yeah. Oh boy, that's a good question, and I'll try to be short. Probably by now you've noticed I can't answer a question quickly. But my expectation is that FAA will continue to trickle out permission for certain groups and certain industries to use them. They're letting Exxon and some others patrol pipelines in Alaska, for example, using drones. They're working with CNN. They issued in mid-January, a proposed set of regulations that would include those things. Again, 400 feet maximum altitude. Oh, that's all right. Did they get that fire out, by the way? Did it finally end? Yes. Okay, thank you. Good. I'd be dreaming about that all night. Daytime, line of sight, get a license, have insurance, have an aircraft certification, which these companies will do. It'll cost a little more to have an airworthiness certificate and I don't know what all. But then you'll pay for a license. You may pay for an online pilot school. In driving, you're dealing with what? 2 dimensions. Here you got 3. Maybe a little more complicated. And I think they'll let realtors have it soon, if they haven't already. But that's a proposed set of regulations, okay? And there's a 2-month comment period by the public, and then FAA gathers all that up and takes it back to wherever their building is and studies it for who knows how long. By September, they could surprise us all, and that's my hope, that journalists will be among that first crowd that can go get a license and buy one of these things, have a little extra insurance, and then fly. Again, among the restrictions, not just feet, but also, I don't anticipate they're going to let us fly around people or structures. So, you know, but there's so much we can do even there. That may take a little longer. My wish, that's my wish, you know, in September, we're turned loose, so to speak, with those restrictions. And then we'll really explore. That's what we've been trying to do here at Mizzou, is to figure out some basics of how would we use these. And they'll be what I would call value-added drone footage or drone images online and in print, stills anyway. But there'll also be another one yet to be named where you use it to snoop around. You know, go over the trees and see if inside that patch of national forest there's actually a big marijuana plantation. And there is that stuff out there. In Missouri, it's the nation's first or second leading cash crop, meaning makes the most money. It's happening in our national forests all over the country. I'd like to kind of help snoop those out. I'd like to find out what industries might be polluting public waterways. You know, I'm an environmental reporter. Land, water, air, I think we can use these to snoop things out. I hate to use that word, but it's kind of what it is. Did I answer your question? I'm rambling so much now that end of the day, happy to be here. And I think I might be, Madam President, tell me to stop, but I'm glad to keep going with questions.
Still seems interested.
We didn't talk about the law, but that's okay. You know, just like any state legislature, there are a wide range of bills filed, some of which at the get-go won't see the light of day. But one did make it, at least with the House of Representatives a couple of years ago, that would outlaw the use of drones in the state of Missouri. And I can't remember now, because I haven't thought about legislation. It's just not my area these days. Whether it was just farms or all places. Texas totally banned drones. No journalist can use a drone in Texas. That's a state law now. And I don't think that's been overturned yet. Here in Missouri, you know, this whole interplay between the legislators who represent the ag interests file a bill like that, and then the University of Missouri lobbyists who will say, well, come on, can't we train students? You don't want to look anti-education, do you? And then they'll put in language that says, except in cases where students at state universities are learning to fly. And as far as I know, nothing truly damaging has occurred yet. But I think the big news will be when FAA announces more people, gives more people the freedom to fly a little bit. And if we do get that freedom, that's why I'm teaching students to fly. And you know, it sounds trite, but to do it the right way. You know, I follow the SPJ code of ethics. You guys, I'm sure ONA has its own code of ethics. The broadcasters have theirs. NPR has its very own, which I think is awesome. If this project in journalism with drones gets ruined, it'll be because of irresponsible use. Please don't be the irresponsible person, unless the risk needs to be taken to get a truly important story. Anyway. I'm happy to talk. And I can tell you that every spring I offer a course. The flyer was all messed up, but it's about learning to fly and learning some of these issues involving the law ethics, and especially applications. How are we going to use these? You know, right now in this room is the cool thing. I don't really care how you build one of these or how it works. I want to take it off the shelf, put a camera on it, learn to fly, and go find new stuff or use it in a new way to scout fires in Costa Rica, to find pollution in Missouri. You guys could be the ones who are thinking out all those applications. That was what was attractive to me. As a reporter, I spent a career as a field reporter. A new tool to get out there and get information and get new perspectives. And this was exciting. Okay. That's the end of my formal presentation. That's what it sounds like. That's what it looks like. You want me to come closer to you there with the cameras? I'll go very slowly.
Oh man, are you ready?
Any questions? That's what I'm going to do. Yeah, let's go. Journals and Professor, Inter Student, and ONA meeting. Well, we'll just drift over here. That was me losing a little bit of control. So I think that's probably better than watching me land it.